Hello everybody and welcome back to another one of my video tutorials. Today we're actually going to be covering an MMO items tutorial, but with mythic mobs involved. So what it actually is how to put a mythic mob's ability inside of an MMO items item. So in order to do so, one important thing I need to note for you guys, or let you guys know real quick, is that in order for this to work, you do need Mythic Mobs Premium. This is a requirement as the plugins hook into one another if you have the premium version. If you do not, this will not work, and I will have to stop you here because this video will not be of any use to you unless you have Mythic Mobs Premium. So if you don't already have it, make sure to go buy it or subscribe for using it monthly. I don't remember how exactly it works, but yeah, there's a thing for it. You can go check it out. Anyway, for those of you who do have Mythic Mobs Premium and MMO items, let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial. As always, also make sure to jump into my Discord channel. Link will be in the description below. Lots of good stuff going on in there. Good conversations I like to have with people. You know, we got lots of questions to ask, lots of information being thrown around for various different things. A lot you can learn in there, a lot of things that you can do. You know, and if you need sentimental messages from me once in a while, I got you covered. If you need to feel good, I got you covered. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the tutorial. So the first thing we're going to need to do is set up a skill in Mythic Mobs. So we're going to go into our Mythic Mobs folder, or plugins, Mythic Mobs, skills. Here, I'm going to go ahead and make a very basic fire ability. So I'm going to call this one Fire Skills.yml. This is going to store all of the skills we are making for this tutorial, which is only going to be one, but I like to make my skill names pretty generic. For example, you know, as you see all my other skills, sword skills, taunt skill, that was specific, electric skills, fire skills. So we are going to go into here, and we're going to start up a new skill. We're going to call it Player Combust. The reason we're giving it such a specific name is because one important thing to know is that there are plenty of pre-made MMO item skills, and you need to be conscious of which ones already have a name, so that way you don't end up with conflicting ability names between the ones that you create and the ones that are already in there. So what we're going to do, let me close that out. We're going to go ahead and carry on with our skill. We don't need to add cooldowns or conditions. Of course, you are welcome to add conditions. However, the skill will still technically be activated even if they aren't met. Even if nothing occurs, your skill will still go on to cooldown. So we're just going to avoid that altogether. Of course, you're welcome to change it at any given point if you see fit for your server, but I don't see this tutorial fit to do so. So what we're going to do is we're going to type out our very basic stuff. So damage amount equals 2, player knockback equals true. Wait, prevent knockback, sorry. Prevent knockback equals true. And now we need to add some sort of targeter. We can use at EIR, MIR, or at PIR. The difference is this one targets players specifically. This one targets mobs, but it only targets the mobs that you specify. And this targets everything. I like using at EIR because there's actually extra modifiers you can add onto it to get more specific with who all it's going to attack. So we're going to go ahead and use EIR, R equals 5 for radius equals 5. And we're going to add another tag onto here, which is actually going to be the ignore tag equals players. This means we can light animals and mobs on fire, but it will not do anything to players. So we're actually going to duplicate this line because I don't want to retype that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to type ignite. We're going to type duration equals 100. This is going to be equal to 5 seconds, as 20 ticks is equal to 1 second, so 100 is 5. Now that we got that out of the way, we already have our very basic skill here. This is going to do everything we want to do, but for the sake of a flair, no pun intended, we're going to want to add a sound file, and we're going to want to add a visual cue. So we're going to do our sound here. We're going to do entity.ghast.shoot. I found this is a very good and very good generic one to use for fire-based skills. And we're going to do @self. Then we're going to add effect particles. Particle equals flame. We're going to make it come from the center of our body. So we're going to add y equals 1. And then we're going to add our various other things for the particle effect. So like amount equals 50, vertical spread equals 0.1, horizontal spread equals 0.1, speed equals 0.1. That's self. So now that we have our skill, go ahead and save and reload Mythic mobs. I'm going to go ahead and spawn in my damage dummy. It's a personal assistant I've made to help me out with tutorials. Spawn damage dummy. Okay, so now that our damage dummy is alive and well, we're going to go ahead and type a command into our game. So we're going to type make sure we're within a good radius too. We did specify 5, so we need to be relatively close to our mob when we try this. And we're going to type test cast player combust. Once we hit enter, we should burst into flame, and so should the zombie. So as you heard there, we had our sound effect play, our visual effect play, and the zombie took damage while being lit on fire immediately after. We can do it again just to make sure everything is in check. Okay, so far so good. Now we need to work on converting this to an MMOItems skill file. To do so, we need to remember the exact name of our skill. The developers suggested you copy your skill name, and then you go into your MMOItems plugin. Let me find it real quick. You're going to go into Dynamic, Mythic Mobs Abilities. Next, we are going to need to add our file name. I already have a format set up here because I tend to forget the formatting often, and if you do too, it's best to always have an extra copy on hand. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it. None of these files will be in your folder by default, so once we start editing, I'm going to give you all a minute to go ahead and copy what you see on screen. But for the time being, we're going to go ahead and change the name here. Make sure you copied your skill name here now, if you didn't already. We're going to paste it here, and we're going to put .iml. One thing that's very important to know, this is going to be the name of your MMOItems ability, but it's not going to be the same as the display name. This might sound confusing at first, but I'll explain it in just a moment. So what we're going to do is now we have all this information, or I will, but you all should take a moment to copy this down if you do not already have it. I'm going to give you a moment before continuing on with the video. So now that you've had time to copy all of this down, what we are going to do is we're going to add the name here. Since they suggested our name up here of the file be the same as our skill name, we're going to go ahead and just paste it here too. It's very important that your skill name is exactly the same as what you're putting here, because this file is going to go into your Mythic Mobs folders, your files, and it's going to look for this skill name. So to make sure that everything is spelled and capitalized correctly, it's best to make sure that you just copy and paste it. Next, this is going to be the name that shows up in the lore. Now, what's the difference between that and your actual, skill name? Well, let me show you. So I'm going to grab an item real quick that's already pre-made. Give X Butcher X. So see in the green area, it says right-click circular slash. That's the name of the ability that comes up in the lore. However, if I were to type MI list abilities, it would actually be closed together. There would not be a space between the two words, because that would be the internal ID that they used when they created the ability for us to, utilize. So, since now you see that there's actually a difference between the file name / ability name and the lore name, that's where we're going to go ahead and jump back into the file. So I don't want it to be called player combust because that just seems kind of awkward. I think what we can do is just type combust, and this will keep it nice and simple, and it's something that we can more easily remember. Next, we can do cooldown. I like to set this to 0 because these are just default values. These are not going to affect whatever. These are basically just for reference in case you forget to add value to your abilities. But you can always change it. So even if I have it set to 5 in here, if I create an item, I can change that value from 5 to whatever I want, to 2, to 10, to 200, whatever the case. This is not set in stone, this is just for reference in case you do not add it when creating your item. So we're gonna go ahead and save this. And then after we save that, we're gonna go back into our file, and we're actually going to change the damage here. You can use 2 if you would like, that's entirely up to you. But since you set the damage inside of MMOItems, it's going to be kind of awkward if you set the damage to like 20, but then you use the ability and you realize you're still only doing 2 because that's what's in your Mythic mobs folder. So in order to change this, we're going to add 2 sets of quotation marks. Inside, we're going to do these caret brackets, I forget what they're called, but we're going to type MMOItems.skill.playercombust.damage. Now this is going to take the damage directly from the item, so whatever we apply the damage to when creating the item, that's how much damage this ability is going to use. So we're going to go ahead and save. And now for this ability to actually be registered within MMOItems, we are going to have to restart our server. So one thing I highly suggest doing, use the test cast method every time you make a new ability, because it would get kind of annoying to have to restart your server for every new ability that you create. So with that being said, I highly recommend, unless it's just one very, very super important thing or you don't have any other ideas at the moment, try to make at least 3 or more skills at a time every time you restart your server. This will save you a lot of headache and a lot of time and make you much more efficient at ability creation in the future if you can organize, plan ahead, and do what's necessary when it's necessary. So, since this tutorial only utilizes 1 skill, I'm going to go ahead and restart now. I will be back in just 1 moment. Okay, so now that we are back on our server, we can go ahead and create a new MMOItems item. So let me clear this out real quick. We're gonna type MMOItems create. I'm gonna make this an axe. You can use whatever you want. I don't know, I just like axes. And we're gonna call it Fire Axe. Next, we're not gonna worry about all of this right now. I wanna cover specifically how to do the skills section. So we're gonna go to the last page, and you will see Blaze Powder. That is going to be the item's abilities. So we're going to click on that, click on Add an Ability, click Ability, and now if we type MIList Ability, this will show all the abilities currently registered in MMOItems, including ones that we have created. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and type the name of our skill. We called it Player Combust in our file. We called it that. Actually, don't ignore this one. It's going to be the name of the file itself, not what you put inside of it. So make sure your file names always correspond to your Mythic or your MMOItems skill name that you intend to use. What you use for the display name is going to be entirely different, perhaps. However, it's going to reference the file name, not anything inside of it. So now that we have Player Combust selected, we're going to add a casting mode. We're just going to go ahead and use right click. And now here, as you can see, default value is 5 like we set it to, and everything else is 0. I want to go ahead and make sure that we can see for ourselves how it's going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the item, and we're going to spawn our damage dummy in again. Damage dummy. Okay. If I right click, whoosh. And as you can see in the health bar, it does an instant 5 damage. But what's really cool about that is even though that's the default, what we can do is we can go MMOItems, edit, axe, fire axe, go back to the abilities, and we can actually change the damage to whatever we want. So let's go ahead and bump it up to 10. We'll need to grab a new axe because it won't update in the newer one. So we're going to move that real quick, and we're going to use this one. You can see now it says right-click combust damage 10. So now if we right-click, its health will drop to 72 instead, and then continue to take damage from being on fire. So ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else who's watching, that is how we make dynamic MMO items using Mythic mobs' abilities. I believe I've covered all of it. Yes, so cooldown and damage are the only ones you can currently change in the file. So that's pretty much all I got for you in this tutorial. I hope this helps. It was much requested, and I apologize for the wait, but well, there you have it, everybody. So have fun creating in the future. I hope everything works out well for you. If you have any questions, make sure to hop on over into my Discord channel. Again, link will be in the description below. If you missed any of my content, make sure to subscribe, as I do have new content rolling out relatively often now. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see what you come up with in the future.